You feel like my past.
What's the worst thing you've ever done?
I saw things.
Hey, GothamGeekGirl here. It's time for another review. We're going to talk about the upcoming Crow remake from Lionsgate. Now, this review is going to contain some spoilers. If you haven't watched the movie yet, you can head over to Big Ol' Belt Media for my completely non-spoiler review. So first, I want to say that I am a huge fan of the original 1994 Alex Proyas film. It holds sentimental value. I even have some like Crow figures. Brandon Lee, rest in peace. I went in completely open-minded with this, so I'm going to break down for you what worked, what went wrong, what was executed poorly, and narratively made no sense. There was a few things that were all over the place. First, I want to say that Lionsgate is emphasizing that this movie is a reimagining of the graphic novel and that it's not a remake of the 1994 classic. It's highly not a remake because the 1994 classic essentially was almost page to page from the comic. This so-called reimagining of the original graphic novel, it's set to introduce new elements to captivate modern audiences. So Eric is seeking revenge for him and his soulmate's murders. It does pull, I will say, it does pull some pretty cool elements. I'll get into that a little bit. But the Supernatural comic, originally published by Caliber Press, the first pages were drawn in 1981 by James O Barr, and it was kind of a way for him to deal with his own personal trauma after a friend died in a car accident, and he felt responsible because he's the one who asked her to pick him up. So the first miniseries was published in 1989. And we got the 1994 film, which was amazing, one of my favorite movies. Fans can recall that in 2016, we got the news that Jason Momoa was actually going to play Eric Draven in a new franchise reboot titled The Crow Reborn. And that actually made a lot of progress throughout its development. It even had a director. It was being worked on since 2016, and it was supposed to get a 2019 release date. But then pre-production came to a halt a month before the film was supposed to enter production in 2018. So with Momoa and Hardy announcing that they would not be doing the movie, that they were exiting The Crow Reborn. So flash forward, we got this one. And I don't know, the original holds a special place in my heart, especially the tragic death of Lee. So many fans really didn't want a remake. We didn't think it was right. I know that there were sequels, but they were not Eric Draven. I don't think this should have been Eric. I think it was also a missed opportunity to cast an Asian actor when Lee meant so much to this movie. I don't know. Like I said, I think it should have focused on another Crow. But let's go into what this movie kind of brought, because like they said, it's for modern audiences. I feel like it lacked its own identity. It was like a Gen Z skip Spotify playlist. The music was pretty bad. His accent goes in and out. He doesn't sound like a Midwestern or country boy. While the movie tries to separate itself from the 90s cult classic, it essentially loses its gritty charm and the core elements of what made the original film so distinctly unique. We don't see any gritty set pieces, no gothic churches. I will say, for positives, the bloodshed was superb. Skarsgård and Twigs' chemistry is undeniably magnetic. They're amazing together. And the reimagining actually does creatively pull some elements from the graphic novel that we have not seen. So the synopsis reads, Soulmates Eric Draven and Shelly Webster are brutally murdered when the demons of her dark past catch up with them. Given the chance to save his true love by sacrificing himself, Draven returns to seek bloody revenge against the killers traversing the worlds of the living and the dead. So the movie comes from director rupertsanders. It's going to be releasing in theaters on August 23rd. Okay, first I want to say all the best parts were in the trailer. The violent scenes were already shown. The highway tunnel scene we saw at CinemaCon, and it was probably the most exciting scene of the movie. Overall, it's literally like biting off John Wick with a mix of like new, like fake goth, the new hot topic, like fake goths. Essentially, it lost every aspect that made The Crow special. I described it as another revenge movie. Like it's Boy Kills World without the color. It lacks any of the true grittiness of the original movie and comic. Now, there's loads of bloodshed. I will say the blood is great. There's a lot of brutal scenes and some actual, like, really fun, memorable moments. And it did take some premises from the graphic novel that worked, but it's nothing in comparison to the 1994 film. So Bill Skarsgård is credited as Eric. He is the Crow. So he's an undead revived musician. FKA Twigs plays Shelly, which is Eric's lover. Danny Huston, he's Vincent Roeg. So he's like the demonic crime lord. He's the main villain in the movie. Josette Simon plays Sophia, Shelly's mother. Lauren Birn is Marion, Roeg's right-hand woman. Sammy Boujala is Kronos. So he's a spirit that guides Eric in his mission. So the film starts off with a little bit of a backstory, like hinting troubled upbringing. We can kind of see this is like part of his trauma. It references like his mom was probably an alcoholic, always sleeping on the couch with a bottle. There's a fire. He has definitely a very troubled, traumatic past. It takes a little creative freedom. We see his childhood. We see the sequence of the horse. This was changed a little bit, but these goth supernatural film elements were in the book. The horse with the barbed wire. That imagery is actually in the book. And I kind of like the way they incorporated the sparkle in the comic, the screams that like taunt him. Like even as an adult, he has nightmares. So it all ties into like his trauma. We're introduced to FKA Twigs, who's Shelly, his love interest. And her friend reveals a video to her. So it hints that something morbid has happened that her and her friends were involved in. Her friend is scared that someone is after her in regards to what was on the phone. So she sends it to Shelly. And Shelly's friend is on the phone with her, and her friend literally gets kidnapped. And Shelly runs right towards the cops, which was very, very weird. She ran directly into them, like it almost looked on purpose. So it was weird. They snatched her up right away. They saw the drugs on the floor, but they were already grabbing her beforehand. It's weird. Conveniently, the only time we see police in the entire film is in this scene, aside from one useless, dirty cop. So they're going to meet in rehab, but why did she want to get caught? This is never really fully explained or explored. Did she want to get like locked up in this thing, in this rehab to avoid being caught by people after them? They never really explain it, but they escape too easily. It's really ridiculous. There's no security measures. There's no security. There's no follow-up either after her and her new lover escape. Her friend was missing and she doesn't even go looking for her. She's acting like shit is like butterflies and rainbows, Mariah Carey. Like
it's love.
Like they're on spring break. She's dancing with Eric, her new love interest, and we're like, didn't her friend literally go missing? How dangerous are these people? What's the time frame? They're getting matching tattoos and like this whole story, but it's like the road company has resources and they couldn't track Shelly down. One of her friends finds her at a rave. It just felt like an excuse to make a rave scene. Like, how did her friend know she was there? And this like century-old company, like they couldn't find her. Aside from them not knowing what happened to her friend's body when they killed her is beyond stupid to me. But also, why would they leave Eric's body behind? The Shelly Eric murder scene was really lackluster. In the comic, it's a broken down car. In a '94 film, it's about like a rent-controlled complaint. And I'm not saying that it has to be rape to feel tragic, but the scene was pretty lackluster in terms of them both dying. And it wasn't executed very well. Also, how would it have been her friend's fault when they were already looking for her? So a lot of it's like kind of messy. She puts a phone in a safe and Eric found it super easily and the company didn't even try to like find it. This is supposed to be like some super secret information. And it made no sense at a point when these like guards like mistakenly kill him, but they never address bringing him in alive or what that has to deal with him just going about their day. Like they go to watch a play. Like, wouldn't he be a major priority? It was kind of odd how they just like brushed upon that they thought that they killed him. La Diable scene, the opera scene, it was really cool, but it really like made no sense. Like, how did he know the difference? There was no regular security that night. He's just like literally killing people, chopping off heads. No one heard the gunshots. No one at all. Not even the people in the theater. No cops anywhere at all. The violence was dope. There was a really great scene where he shoots the guy through himself. I love that. The healing wounds looked incredible. I love that. But really, it was just reliant on the chemistry. It was reliant on the love story, and it was undeniable. And I like that Shelly was fleshed out this time. A lot of things are centered on her character, and we see her as more than just flashbacks. And it was great to see her be more fleshed out in her own character. I also like that the villains were updated. They're not so like henchmen, like corny, like they were updated. And Danny Huston is amazing. He's a Vincent Roeg. He's a demonic crime lord, but he's essentially not he doesn't like live up to his ability. He's from Days of Nine, American Horror Story. I kind of wanted him to be more dangerous. He's the main villain. He's a sophisticated crime lord, and he's steadily revealed to have some dark, unseen deal with the supernatural. So he's like centuries old, and he deals with these forces before the events of the film. He orders the death of Shelly, and Vincent finds himself intrigued by the discovery of another immortal like himself. And he does his best to arrange a confrontation with the young man, but essentially, like I said, there's a lot of wasted opportunities. His death was horrible, super boring. Lauren Birn is Marion Rogue's right-hand woman. She's kind of lackluster as well. Like their power and resources, they only have one cop on hand. They didn't really show like their manipulations reach. The friend goes missing, and that was handled so stupidly. This guy's been around for a freaking century, and you're telling me like all they care about is sacrificing like a bunch of teenagers. That's it. I brought up Fall of House of Usher. That's the perfect example of showing like the abuse of power. If these people are around for centuries, they should literally have like connections to the president. He only cared about like getting teenagers. Bujala is Kronos. He's a spirit that guides Eric in his mission. Why right away? The time frames are really confusing. The emphasis on fantastic elements were only when it was convenient. Like they made an excuse for her committing murder, but they never used the crow to its full potential. We don't see the crow like flying around and like having conversations with Eric, which was awesome in the 1994 film, like seeing like all the rooftops and the scenes and the churches. And that takes me back to like the lack of grunge style. This felt like a new age Hot Topic wannabe. The music was corny. The musical influences from the original, from Joy Division, The Cure, Nine Inch Nails, and like this just didn't have any like soul, anything to set it apart. FKA's voice is beautiful, and I like that they tied music to her backstory. I wish they gave us a little more context to her mother, aside from her being like some kind of like music mogul that literally sacrificed her daughter. Josette Simon was Sophia, Shelly's mother. She was great, but I would have liked to see a lot more from her character besides her like drop a glass of blood. It lacked any of the grittiness of the original film. Everything just looked like luxury. There were no, like I said, the churches. They're just literally like hanging out on spring break, giving each other tattoos in the studio. The comics were originally published in 1981. So yes, I do understand that it's a different time period, but I feel like it still lacked a lot of the elements that made it grow special in terms of also his abilities. Like it didn't have any of the acrobatics. It didn't have any of the one-liners, or they mentioned briefly that he writes and draws, but they didn't show like his beautiful wordplay and his poetry. Like he literally taunts his victims with poetry. They didn't show any of the true emphasis on life, like in their comic, like him caring. Like there was no metaphors, no caring about the soul. And I get that it didn't have henchmen like T-Bird or Funny Boy. We also didn't have Gideon. We didn't have Orsifer Elbrick, no Sherry. And he just talks to the crow like in between places. I don't know. Essentially for me, I think that's some of the most important elements, like his acrobatics, his metaphors, him literally taunting and like speaking of like life, death, and hell, and all these different elements that I just felt like it severely lacked any of that. Like I said, the murder was awesome. Brutality was great, but I wish we would have got a little more of that, a little more for his personality. I just didn't feel Eric Draven. And I don't know. It just really didn't do it for me. And I tried to not be so biased, but I don't think this movie needed to be made. So let me know what you guys think in the comments.
You know that love promises only pain.